Hello and welcome to Haunted Montreal's Spooky Story Sessions. I'm your host, Holly Rhiannon, and today I'm going to tell you all about the Phantom Calèche. With over 200 documented ghost stories, Montreal is easily the most haunted city in Canada, if not all of North America. Haunted Montreal is dedicated to researching these paranormal tales, and our channel brings you videos in both French and English every Saturday. Today's episode examines the Phantom Calèche, one of Montreal's most dangerous apparitions. But before we get into it, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you get notified every time we have a new tale to share. And hey, if you're already subscribed, thank you so much. Welcome back. We're happy to have you. Now, without further ado, let's get spooky. Horse-drawn carriage rides in Montreal were a long-cherished tradition for centuries. From the 18th until the 21st, horse-drawn carriages, also known as calèches, would ferry tourists around Montreal to take in the sights and attractions. Those driving the carriages included a cast of colorful characters who had a long history of unveiling some of Montreal's most unusual and darkest secrets. This long-enjoyed tourist tradition came to an end in 2020 on orders of Montreal's Mayor Valérie Plante. While most people believed her decision was influenced by animal rights activists, a few speculate that she decided to ban the calèches due to one particular reason: a paranormal carriage known only as the Phantom Calèche, putting tourists in serious danger. "It's a shame," said a carriage driver who wished only to be known as JP, "because this is a very old tradition and is part of Montreal's heritage." According to the archival documents, in 1808, a man named Timothy Bigelow described his own carriage ride up Mount Royal to visit the abandoned castle and recently erected tomb of Simon McTavish, today one of Montreal's most infamous ghosts. He wrote, "Towards evening, we took calèches and drove out to the mountain. We passed by the new house of the late Mr. McTavish, which he had left unfinished, and we visited his tomb, which is situated between the house in a thick wood on the mountainside. The situation is the most romantic that can well be imagined. Simon McTavish, the richest man in the city, had died suddenly in 1804 while constructing a magnificent castle on the slopes of Mount Royal. Following his untimely demise, all work on the castle stopped, and instead workmen spent their efforts building a beautiful mausoleum at the back of the property so Simon McTavish could rest in eternal peace. His nephews also erected a tall stone column devoted to his manly virtue on a cliff behind the mausoleum. As the years passed, the abandoned castle and mausoleum slowly began to crumble. Soon, the old castle began to take on the reputation of a haunted house. There can be no denying that this macabre setting became a popular tourist attraction in Montreal. New England philosopher Henry David Thoreau, who also took a carriage ride to the McTavish site, noted, "His tomb was behind the woods with a remarkable high wall and a higher monument." Enjoying the creepy scenery, Thoreau mused that McTavish could not imagine how dead he would be in a few years, and all the more dead and forgotten for being under such a mass of gloomy stone where not even memory could get at him with a crowbar. Even in 2019, before the carriages were retired, drivers would recount historical facts along with strange tales and dark Montreal legends. In one example, a tale called The Devil and the Wind was told by carriage drivers passing the Notre Dame Basilica. The story is about the corner of Notre Dame and Saint-Sulpice streets, where there is always a little breeze even in the hottest weather. The devil and the wind, goes the legend, were walking down Notre Dame Street when this church had just been built. "Why," said the devil, "what is this? I never saw this before." "I dare you to go in," replied the wind. "You dare me, do you? You wait here till I come out," cried the devil. "I'll be at the corner," said the wind. His Majesty went in. He has never yet come out, and the wind has remained ever since waiting for him at the corner. Another persistent legend that was told by Montreal's calèche drivers is that of the Lady of the Harbour. Perched atop the Notre Dame de Bon Secours Church in Old Montreal, also known informally as the Sailors' Church, is a magnificent statue of Mary, the Star of the Sea. With statues of two angels of the apocalypse flanking her, the Lady of the Harbour has long been a sacred object to sailors coming in and out of Montreal's old port. Historically, sailors would pray to the statue of Mary, the Star of the Sea, to ask her for protection or to thank her for a safe crossing over the Atlantic Ocean. When a ship arrived in Montreal's Old Port, it was a tradition for sailors to show gratitude to the Lady of the Harbor with a prayer on board before entering the city for often debaucherous activities. According to the legend told by the Calèche drivers, one night a ship arrived late in the harbor. The sailors, so very eager to indulge in the city's red light district after 3 months at sea, forgot to say a prayer to the Lady of the Harbor. As they began to disembark, the loud blare of horns could be heard from the roof of the sailors' church. As one Calèche driver rolled by, he looked up and saw that the 2 statues of the angels of the apocalypse had lifted their trumpets and began blowing into them, foreshadowing a certain doom. The driver then noticed a thick fog rolling in across the river. What he saw next utterly astounded him. The statue of the Lady of the Harbor began to turn around, turning her back on the port. Suddenly, thunder roared and lightning flashed as a major storm rolled in. That frightening night, dozens of ships were smashed apart and several sailors drowned in Montreal's port. When the sun rose the following morning, the lady was facing the harbor once again. The late Montreal bard Leonard Cohen was so stricken by the statue that he featured her in his song Suzanne. And the sun pours down like honey on Our Lady of the Harbor, and she shows you where to look among the garbage and the flowers. Needless to say, carriage drivers would recount the legend of the Lady of the Harbor to warn visiting sailors not to forget their prayers. Despite the carriage drivers imparting local lore to the tourists over the centuries, animal rights activists began calling for a ban on calèches in the 1980s. The activists argued that it was cruel to make horses work long hours in difficult conditions, including intense heat and traffic. Anne Streeter, who founded a group called Action Anti-Calèche in 1989, was one citizen who kept pressure on politicians to ban them over the years. The Montreal SPCA described the calèche industry as antiquated, inhumane, and unsafe. Things came to a head in April of 2016 when a runaway calèche slammed into a car in Griffintown. The accident prompted former Mayor Denis Coderre to try and ban horse-drawn carriages for a full year, but the calèche drivers won a court injunction that allowed them to continue operating. Agony struck again in September 2017 when a horse collapsed on the Place d'Armes right in the heart of the tourist district. Valérie Plante, a mayoral candidate at the time, called the incident revolting in a tweet, writing, "An outmoded industry. Let's pull the plug on this inhumane and unsafe industry." When Plante won the election in November 2017, she made good on her promise. The city of Montreal was quick to identify 4 accidents involving horse-drawn carriages since 2014 and submitted 14 reports of infractions concerning the health of the animal or the poor state of the carriage. The city of Montreal then put the calèche owners on notice, warning them that the last day horses would be allowed to trot through Old Montreal Street was December 31st, 2019. Those who violated the ban were threatened with fines of $500 to $1,000 for a first offense, which doubled for reoffenders. The swift action of Mayor Valérie Plante against the carriages was applauded by the SPCA and Action Anti-Calèche group, but the carriage owners themselves were not happy. JP had his own theories about why Mayor Valérie Plante was so intent on banning them. "It's the Phantom Calèche, for sure," he said. When pressed, JP explained, "There's a legend about a Phantom Calèche that tends to frighten tourists away from our industry if they hear it. According to the legend, one of the calèches in Montreal's fleet is paranormal. It is known as the Phantom Calèche." He continued, "In the past, you may have noticed a lot of horse-drawn carriages in Old Montreal. These calèches were available for tourists to take a ride around the historic part of the city for a fee. However, as I mentioned, there is one that is known only as the Phantom Calèche, which was said to roll along Rue St. Paul during the early hours. There are 2 versions of the story. In the first, the driver invites passengers to climb aboard. However, when anyone tries to step in, the calèche vanishes into thin air. In the second version of the story, the tourist climbs aboard the calèche, and the calèche begins rolling away, and that is the last you ever see of the tourist. They're spirited away to the netherworld. When asked if there was any truth behind the legend, JP replied, 2 tourists went missing under mysterious circumstances in Old Montreal earlier in 2019. Apparently, the mayor was not happy about it. Whether Mayor Valerie Plante banned the Calèches to satisfy the animal rights activists or to simply try and get rid of a dangerous spirit is unknown at this time. The Phantom Calèche is certainly one of the city's most alarming apparitions, as featured in the popular Streets of Montreal TV series by Michael Leo Donovan. Whatever the case, with other carriages being banned, nobody knows at this time if the Phantom Calèche has continued its rounds in Old Montreal, or if it, too, has disappeared from the cobblestone streets once and for all. Are you a Montreal resident, or perhaps a tourist, who has encountered the Phantom Calèche in the past, or maybe even recently? If so, we'd love to know. As always, we want to hear your thoughts about what could be going on here. Thank you so much for stopping by. If it's your first video, we do hope you'll stick around for more. We put out videos in both French and English every Saturday. If you'd like to learn more about the organization founded by the talented Donovan King, it's all listed in the description down below, along with links to purchase tickets to in-person haunted storytelling tours. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. We'll have a new video out for you next Saturday, but until then, stay spooky.